afternoon. Today is Friday, February 25th, 2022. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. We are meeting at the Grandview Technology Center at 1591 North Jordan Avenue in Provo, Utah. The time is approximately 1:20 p.m. And we will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Hertel, Superintendent.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
And we need to excuse McKay Jensen, Gina Hales, and Nate Bryson. Thank you. All right, is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene study session.
All right. I'm going to turn the time over to Mark Wheeler, our Director of Facilities, about the proposed 2022-2023 capital budget.
Hi, everybody.
Mark, you need to use the microphone. Just
The handheld.
No, the handheld ones.
They're right there. Okay.
I think you might have to turn it on.
Is that good? Okay. All right, everybody. Let me know if you have questions as we go through this. And Bonnie, thanks for your help with this slide. If you can go to that first one. What this first sheet that you're going to see here is the result of, I'm not sure the official name, Facility Advisory Committee that was formed just recently. And we went through several, well, a lot of versions of project proposals for the coming budget year. So what you're seeing here is what was voted on and what ended up being the highest points voted on by that committee.
Mark, I'm sorry, can I interrupt really quick?
Yep.
Could you please define what the Facilities Advisory Committee is? Because we've had those in the past, and I believe it's different. It's made up differently now. So I just want to make sure the public understands that it's not the same as it's been in the past.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This committee is different than the one we had for previous bonds, right? And for major projects. This one was to review in-house annual capital improvement projects with available budget that we have with things up to $350,000 and above $350,000. We have it divided in two categories. So these are just normal projects that come up on an annual basis, and there's a committee now that involves several people that vote and review what's requested.
And they're all from within the district, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, no outside consultants on this committee. Thank you. First of all, let me know if you have any questions about any of these line items. There's a couple I want to point out that I know you'll have questions on, but stop me if you have anything at all. The top one is one that just surfaced over the past 4 weeks at Centennial, and it should actually say auditorium, sound system, and lighting. There's some needs.
I was at the performance where it went out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So this is a new one. This was voted by the committee. This will be part of the project for summer projects. We just now got to go through the process of fine-tuning the scope with the Department of Technology and then requesting bids. So that'll be something that will be worked on this next for FY23. Some of these, the one that is blank that says GLC gym adjustments, this is to accommodate several TIMPU programs this summer and for next summer. They will be using this Grandview campus as a location for football, lacrosse, soccer, band, a lot of those programs, as we can't have any students on the campus during that window this summer and next summer. And so we've got to make some adjustments in this other Grandview building, what we call the carpeted gym. We'll create some space where bands can store equipment and access that here on site when they practice. And then there'll also be a setup for all of those other teams to hold their summer programs. Yes?
can you explain why they can't be on campus? Like, because like they have been in the past. So just so the public's aware of why they can't be there.
We're trying to get this summer window and next summer window to have no students on campus so our contractors can move wherever and whenever to do whatever they have to do without interruptions. And that includes summer school and camps. And so we're just trying to free up that campus for about a 60-day window to give our construction team a little bit of an advantage to accelerate and to move freely with all the equipment and everything that's got to happen.
So that's for this summer and next summer?
Yep, summer of '22 and summer of '23. Yeah.
Mark,
They can't use Edgemont or Rock Canyon or Centennial
So they'll be using the two gyms at
fields.
Yeah, this one, these fields here, they are flatter than Rock Canyon, for example. There's much more acreage here than they would get at Edgemont, and better parking access here, and storage capability. Good question.
Mark,
Yes.
what's the best way for us to make sure, how do I say this? We know that there's not a lot of love lost between the Provo side of town and the Timpview side of town. And Grandview is the Provo side of town. And so the idea of a 6 o'clock in the morning football practice or marching band could damage that relationship even further. Has that conversation gone on yet so people can start getting ready? And if not, Todd, can we make sure that we enlist you in this process as well?
Conversations have started.
Okay.
We'll make sure that that's clear.
Okay. I want no phone calls on this.
That's wishful thinking.
It's just getting
Actually,
forward.
it doesn't start till 8 a.m.
Now that you put it up to the public, I'm sure you're going to get a few calls.
Yeah.
I know 7 a.m. band practice in the field probably won't be a good idea.
Yeah, no, they don't start till 8, so you think.
Yeah.
The other question I have, Mark, sorry to pick on you. Provo Peaks North Playground ADA improvements, that's a new playground. Why do we need to do this?
This is that northeast playground, Keith, where we removed the damaged old pirate ship.
Oh, okay.
And so we're trying to replace a piece of equipment and make that pit ADA compliant and accessible. And we're trying to replace the pirate ship with something that's an ADA approved piece of playground equipment.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
One
Melanie?
more question about the Timpview. So I'm just thinking cross-country, because that's what my son runs. They don't use the inside buildings. Can they still meet at the Kiwanis Park area?
We are trying to shift every program, because we're nervous if we say yes to one group, that it will open.
But we could tell them they need to go to like Sertoma or something instead.
Yeah, another property, correct. If it was in the general area and they went to Sertoma or wherever, correct.
That would be considered a shift to Edgemont, Rock Canyon, Centennial.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, yes.
So Provo High is pretty new. Is it normal that the gym surfaces need to be sand and refinished already?
No, it is not normal. That one is just surfaced in the past 2 weeks. What happened is there were several groups that were allowed to use the gyms, and I'm trying to be careful here, and they used props, and it created indentations throughout the two auxiliary gym floors, and you can see signs of it as well on the main gym floor. So we've listed an estimate of $90,000 because we know something always comes up, but right now the estimate's about $80,000. And the reason it's so expensive, it's more than just a refinish. We have to sand down and then refinish again, repaint those 3 floors to get rid of the damage. And so it's an extensive, which will cause a problem for Provo High this summer. I've already spoken with Jared about it. They're going to lose access to those 3 gyms this summer for open gyms and other activities because of the window we'll need.
So are those props not allowed anymore?
I've requested it. I just don't know what conversations have happened at the school.
It just seems like an expensive prop.
Do we not hold people liable for those kinds of, that kind of damage?
I don't know how you would do it with the groups that are using it. Good question.
It's not intentional damage. I think it's a factor of the program that was using it.
But it was an internal group?
It's something we're working on internally with the school. There are other locations they can practice.
But it wasn't an external group that was using our gym?
Oh, it was.
No. Yeah, it was a school group.
Okay.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
now we know better what to allow and not allow on the gym floor?
I mean, because I saw that when they had at the Thunderdome a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago, the
that
big band bash, they put the floor covering down just so that things wouldn't happen that way.
Correct.
Do we have those coverings at Provo High?
They do not have those at Provo High. What's interesting is that this group will also once in a while you'll see there's also damage in the common area VCT flooring at Provo High, and you see it in what used to be the common area at Timpview as well. It takes its toll, and so we need to invest in some better covers. I'm told that they put down some tarps and things, but the tarps aren't enough to prevent the damage. So we're going to look into that, some better covers.
I'm happy to volunteer my superintendent's contingency toward that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Any other questions on any of those before I get to this lower group? Okay. The one main project I'd like to visit with you about is this one listed at 1.1 million, utility road adjustment of Timpview High School for the cell tower. If you can go to the next slide, Bonnie. So what you're looking at here, right, is the south practice field. Upper right is the baseball field at Timpview. This road, you see a part of it highlighted in yellow. That's a utility access road. It's been there for years. It is covered by 2 legal easements. So even though we bought that property several years ago, there's an easement by the city. There's also an easement by AT&T. And we use it as well to take grounds equipment as needed up to the baseball field. So with the long-term review we've been having with the cell tower company, which currently sits on the south side of the west bleachers, if you can visualize that, because of our project, we've got to move that. And because of an agreement that was signed 22 years ago, we have no out until 2030. And it's in the contract that we have to pay to move that cell tower equipment if the need ever came up. And unfortunately, we're at that point. So we've been working with that group, everybody involved. Our attorney's been speaking with their attorney for several months, even back when Stephanie was still here. We were having those coordination meetings. So the only option that will work for us and to be out of the way of our project is we've got to create a road that stems off this utility road that goes up to this corner just off of the right field fence line of the baseball field. We have to build the pad and the structure for them to move their cell tower equipment and place it there. So of that $1.1 million line item, about, and I'm speaking in ranges here, about $650,000 of that 1.1 is the cost to move the cell tower and get things set up. Another about $300,000 is the cost to grade and create this road that they'll need to access that. The last portion of that 1.1, if you can go to the next slide, Bonnie. The last portion is to create, again, baseball is to your north here, is to create a landscape buffer behind the neighbors' fence lines, which we are shifting the utility road slightly north, and based on requests from the neighbors, so that that road is not too high, so people are looking in their backyards. We have to create a retaining wall to shift this road before we can take it back to normal grade back up behind the baseball field. And then there'll be about a 70-foot landscape buffer with evergreen trees and drainage points to accommodate those requests. That's about the last $300,000 of that 1.1 million. So this work here with the cell tower and this landscape buffer, it's an expensive step, and we have attempted and reviewed every possible scenario to not to pay for this cell tower shifting. And we just, unfortunately, we had no legal out.
Can you remind us why we have to move it again?
Because the new design, there's an ADA ramp that will come up from the future softball field. It comes up into that area where it currently sits, and we're adjusting the west side bleachers slightly as well. And so that whole work through there where it currently sits, it would interrupt this ADA ramp to get from softball to baseball. And that will eventually be people's access coming from the field, the main field, down to public restrooms.
And there's no way to redo the ramp around
Look
it.
at redoing the construction, the entire west side of that area. and the cost to reconfigure the whole thing was like about $750,000. So it was like you're either redrawing the plans and reconfiguring it, it's gonna be $750,000.
It's expensive either
and
way.
it's not optimal, or you move it and go with your original plan. So it's, you're,
Also, the landscape buffer, is it really only going to be behind that one neighbor's house?
no, it'll be multiple neighbors, isn't it? Like
It'll be multiple neighbors?
2 or 3 houses.
And is that just us being accommodating, or is that something that's really
I
necessary?
mean, because it's not a road that everybody can access. I mean, it's not going to be accessed all the time.
No, it'll continue to be accessed by the cell tower company, but they'll jut off to that new road access, so they won't go around that bend anymore. Our guys, our maintenance team will continue to use it for access to the baseball field and the south side of the football field.
And as much as we try to prevent it, our coaches use it all the time. Kids use it when the gate is open. It gets a lot more use than honestly it should. But unless we're going to put somebody there to patrol it, we have no way of stopping it. It also happens in off hours. How many times do you think, Mark, we've had the lock cut on that gate?
Nonstop.
Nonstop. So there are people driving it and up there all the time, and anyway, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Bonnie, can you go to the next slide? Any other questions about those capital projects or this detail? Okay. The step we're at right now with the cell tower company is we're waiting for them to get us their details so our engineering team can get this design and start to get this whole tower shifted.
So where exactly will the tower go?
It will sit, if you can go back one more, Bonnie. It'll sit right in this area, just off of right field.
And I remember when we were buying the park that there was like 100-foot radius. We couldn't, so is that within that radius?
Yep, no, it'll be just barely outside of that 100-foot radius from this well house, pump house that the city owns. Yeah. Our other options were 100 feet back from Timpview Drive over by the existing public restrooms, which we couldn't do because it would have been right next to tennis courts and in our practice field. And they had 3 other options, when I say they, the cell tower company, that were actually in our practice field. And we
defeats the purpose of why we purchased.
Yeah, we had to reject all of those. So this became the best of the worst options.
On this drawing here that shows
Go to the next one, Bonnie.
Yeah, the next one. Are we looking at the relocation of the pavilion there too, down in the bottom left corner?
That will be a new pavilion at some point, when we get to the end of the project, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that included in the 1.1 million?
No, that's a separate one. That's included in our project costs.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's something we committed to the neighbors at the beginning of the project. We would replace that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it just looks like it's just moving west a little bit from where it currently is, or no?
The pavilion?
The pavilion's gone right now.
Yes. Oh, correct. South from where it was. Correct. Okay. Yeah. So this will just be slightly west of the existing playground.
Okay. Is that the playground right here?
They don't show the playground on this drawing, and so it's this to give you a bearing here. This yellow building here is the existing restroom facility, up closer to the tennis courts.
Okay.
This doesn't show the outline of the playground.
It does on our
It does on
version
ours.
shows
That
up a
looks
little
just really
better.
washed out.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yep. It must be. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Bonnie, can you go to the next? This is just a reminder. Some of these we've discussed before, just with long-term planning. Just a refresher for you on some of the things that are being discussed. And again, we spoke about this with this facility, in-house facility advisory committee. This top tier under immediate planning items, East Bay Post High is at the top of that list to find a permanent home for them. Whether it's something built or whether it's something leased, but as you know, it's very expensive to lease.
Was that, so I saw that in the, up before it said it was East Bay Post High was $55,000 a year?
That's the existing lease.
Yeah.
That's the existing lease.
Correct. And there was an option at one point to take additional lease space where they're currently at, but it creates a situation where we're paying, do you remember the number annually? If we
It was about, in total cost, it would be about $200,000 a year, because they wanted to increase the amount to 40% per square foot. So it was going to increase, just the base lease was going to be about $155,000 a year. And then they wanted us to pay their taxes and repair costs. So it pushes it to about $200,000 a year.
My heavens.
How long can we stay there
They
with our
won't-
current contract?
So we have one more year on our current contract. If we do anything with the lease to change it, they want a 5-year agreement. So Siraj has indicated that he's willing to make it work next year again, because he'd rather have a long-term thought-out plan of where the building is than have just some rush place with it where it ends up. So
That's still not a lot of time.
it's not a lot of time.
And Siraj shared with us as well, they have increased enrollment again planned for this August. And so it's become one of the more urgent planning items. And this existing lease, by the way, if we were to extend that, they continue to increase that lease every 12 months by 3%, 4%.
Do we
Every
get,
year it's 3%.
Yeah.
3%.
Derek, do we get extra funding for East Bay Post High?
So there is specific funding for them, but it's not going to cover any kind of construction stuff. It's just mainly operating things. And if we were to try to ask for it to pay for anything capital in nature, we would have to petition the state, and they do not like to grant those waivers.
As you look at this list here, many of the items on bullet 1 and bullet 3 are remaining needs that we've identified in terms of physical facility needs throughout the district. So you may ultimately see a revamped version of this listing. Just when we were talking about future possible uses for the current Dixon building and the Dixon site, those were some of the ones that we've collected. We're not ready to make any recommendations on that yet, but it will look a lot like that. Okay, sorry, Mark.
No, that's good, thank you. Any other questions about any of those long-term items? Yeah, Jennifer?
Okay, so I've talked with Siraj a little bit, but I don't know if everybody is aware of the medical fragile needs facility, and I'm also curious, it's been a while, have there been discussions about where we might be able to place, I think he wanted to place students somewhere starting next school year if possible, so what are we kind of thinking about that?
That's a good question. That's where the committee has kind of come into play, where we've been bringing that together. We sat down just recently to kind of discuss, do we need to have something in place for next year? Because we can go and start looking to possibly acquire a piece of property. And Siraj says, well, I don't want to do that yet. I'd rather let's sit down and discuss what our options are, what are all of our pieces of property that we have that could be used as an option, and start having that discussion around that.
Because that one's not big enough that they need their own campus, right?
What was that, sorry?
That program's not big enough that they need their own campus, they just need a place somewhere.
Correct. So that he's talked about somewhere up here. He's talked about attaching it to the new middle school. He's talked about possibly using a piece of elementary that's not being utilized. If a section could be partitioned off. We need to have that extensive discussion just around those two requests. Because that right there hasn't, in terms of actually trying to narrow down where it would be, that part hasn't happened yet. Because we met, 2 weeks ago, where we just talked about, okay, Siraj, these are coming up, what do you want to do? We can extend, we can go and look at acquiring a place, we can get a real estate agent on, bird dogging a facility that would have the sizing area that you would need, or we can try to see if there's a conciseness of a plan where there's multiple things going together in one building that we address numerous needs at one time. And he said, I prefer let's just hold off and make a collective decision on this. All right. So that's kind of where it landed about 2 weeks ago. But we do need to continue these conversations, because you're right, it is still a critical need that needs to move forward.
Okay.
What is a digital innovation
That was
space?
my question.
That is a new request, and I apologize, we have a new director. I apologize, I can't remember her name.
Susie Cox.
Yes, thank you. So that request has come from her to reconfigure some space here in this building. And I have not had a chance yet to meet with her, so I don't know the programming and the scope of that yet. But that's one that's just been over the past month that's been requested. We'll just need a little bit of time to kind of go over that and see what's possible.
Can
Yeah.
I ask why we're deferring the Centennial Cafeteria?
When our facility advisory committee went through all of the possibilities, that one was deferred just based on the needs of other projects before that one. It did not receive the points from the committee to proceed with that one for this coming year.
Hard choices.
Yeah. There were two that were really tough this year. One was Centennial Cafeteria expansion, and one was a technology building warehouse addition because of those needs.
Can you speak to that one? I know I've seen it once before, but I didn't get a chance to ask what. I'd just like to hear more about why we need to expand that.
So with the increased one-to-one needs with the district over the last several years, and with the interactive TVs, the technology existing space does not have what it needs to store all of that ongoing equipment. And so what it would look like, if you can visualize that building, it was going to be a slight addition to the east side of that building with a new bay door with just increased storage space with everything.
Storage for what, though?
Interactive TVs and equipment. Technology equipment overall.
Is it a staging area?
Like brand new stuff?
Pre-staging or?
The constant, JP, you can jump in here if you'd like, it's the constant inventory switching back and forth with all the needs to supply all the needs per school.
As far as the AV stuff goes, whenever we got rid of the projectors in most of the schools, that was an easy throwaway, get rid of that stuff. But as we pull these interactive TVs out, we can't just throw those away. So we have to store them for a amount of time until we can get them sent to, or sold, or whatever we end up doing with them. And then also, whenever we do our projects, we have to order in advance, sometimes 60, 90 of these TVs. And where do we store those while we're waiting to get them installed? So that's kind of where we're at.
We are very short on space in this district. Storage space, meeting space, office space, and instructional space. We're very short.
Any other questions about that project? One thing that I shared with the committee, and I know they understand this, one of our challenges with deferring is when we get back to that, whenever that timeline is we get back to that, it'll be more money. And so that's our challenge right now with any of these projects. If we hesitate for a month, it's more money based on what's happening in the market. Bonnie, can you go to the next slide? This last slide, I just wanted to give you an update on the TIMPView budget so you can see where we're at. The one thing that I want to share with you is that we work daily to control the costs and what's happening with market escalation. There's not a day that goes by that somebody isn't requesting something because of some market condition somewhere that's causing a problem. So since we started this project, we've experienced about 15% market escalation since we started the TIMPView project. The Utah market, as you can see, has experienced 25% since fourth quarter of 2019. And so we're right at 15% for TIMPView. And so on an $80 million bond, we're looking at $92 million right now for the same square footage. We haven't increased square footage. We haven't added a bunch of scope. And this includes, when I say we battle every day, I have conversations nonstop, not only with contractors and their subcontractors and suppliers and manufacturers, but also with our design team nonstop. And so I just wanted to let you know where we're at. There was one idea, and I know, Derek, you probably haven't even seen this yet. I just sent this to Derek yesterday with some of our projects that were deferred, the current budgets for this year that we will not carry over to this next year based on the committee decisions. There's about $1.3 million that I would propose we shift towards this Timpview budget because I know we will not make it the next 2 years without that money. And so anyway, that'll take some more discussion, but that's one idea to help us with a small step. And I don't, as far as Dixon and Wasatch, I will not know for sure where we're at until the end of April for Dixon, because we have our bid date in April, and it'll be towards the end of May, early June for Wasatch, to know for sure where we're at on those 2 projects. Any questions at all with this?
It'd be nice if the legislature could help us with this escalation. I mean, there's a lot of other goofy stuff that comes out of the legislature every year that I never understand what the purpose of that is. This is real purpose, and many districts are dealing with this either right now or will in the future.
This will continue to be a challenge. I listened to a neighboring school board meeting just a few days ago, and they're talking about a bond for this coming fall with more projects that they need. And I have an idea where they'll be per square foot, which will be just another level above what we're experiencing for when we started Timpview. The new Cypress High School, for example, will be the biggest high school in the state. That thing will be just not just massive for square footage, but massive in price by the time they start and finish. It's going to continue to be a real challenge for school districts. And I shared this with the superintendent recently and with Derek. These are just 2 small examples. Kitchen equipment, for example, we received a change order request for Timpview, and it was in the 20,000 range. So it wasn't huge, but this is our option. We either have to say yes, or they cancel our order, and we start over with a new timeline. And we get variations on those conversations every day from some sector. That one turned out a little bit better than other discussions because we convinced them to share the expense with us, and they agreed to take a third of it. And our contractor took a third, and we took a third. Unfortunately, we don't get that same result. Most of the groups we try to approach it that way, they just say, take it or leave it, or we'll cancel your order. So it's just it's a battle. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know where we're at and the ongoing challenges with costs.
How are you enjoying your job, Mark?
It's really fun some days. So yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next we're going to have a Big Springs Technology Report by Chad Duncan and JP Pontius from the IT department.
Good job. Thank you.
I usually crack some joke about Mark when I start these things. And I was back there thinking, hell hath no fury, like the reconstruction of a new high school. Right, Mark? I think Mark could probably attest to that. Hey, Bonnie, I do need to present one slide. Jacob sent that to me, and I was just expecting him to share the data, but he shared a graph. I want to show him that. Anyway,
You need the mic.
What's that?
You need the mic. Kate said so.
It's for the broadcast.
You see, Kate's the boss in this service. Don't get used to it, though, Kate. All right, so Camp Big Springs. We have a few unique challenges with camp this year. The facility itself hasn't been touched in 3 years. I know we haven't done it in 2, but we're only there in June, and then it's been a June, and then a June, and then we're June again. So there's a lot of maintenance work that has to go on up there. We've been working with Mark on that and his team, but we have a lot of platform reconstruction. If you guys have been to camp, I know a few of you have been to camp and seen some of the platforms that our RV tents sit on. There's some disarray with some things up there. There's bridges that have kind of collapsed since then. So there's a lot of those type of repairs that have to happen. Our ongoing costs that Derek kind of mentioned earlier, we have ongoing costs with camp. So food every year has just been increasing. And it's really interesting too, this year there's certain things like sloppy joes. Well, we can't get ground beef, so now what are we going to do? So we're having to play some of those games, and the costs have just skyrocketed. So we get those type of things that happen every year. So what we've done is every other year we increase the cost of parents. So this year we went from 120 to 150, and next year when we do it again, the district covers that increase. So every other year we increase it on parents, and then the district incurs the cost. Now, if we want to change how we do that and we increase it for parents every time, I'm open to that. That's kind of how we've been doing it. I know we're working on hiring a new risk management person, so when we get that person hired, one of the first things we'll have them do is kind of look at camp, and if you think of an outdoor environment and the risks associated in that, it's fun. I bring risk management in from time to time, and they have a little bit of a heyday with me on certain things, so that'll be kind of an interesting thing. I've had a problem with the staffing this year, which has been interesting. Usually we have the same staff that come year after year, but I literally had no female teacher applicants like at the beginning of this, and so we had to push it out, and we've since hired 4. We got some really good applicants, but we're still short on the male side. So it's just been kind of crazy, like just the whole shift with staffing. The other interesting thing, and I'm not sure all of you are aware of, that we do the golf tournament in the summer, and that money goes towards scholarships for kids to go to camp. So we have scholarship forms that we give out to all the students, and they can fill those out. And we're pretty lenient on how that functions. Like if they say they need it, we just do it. But that's been a really neat thing for us, for kids going to camp. Another thing we're doing differently this year at camp is instead of hiring staff, we've hired like younger kids to do this. I had a conversation with Jan and a few others about hiring student interns to actually work at camp, so they can work and earn money at camp, and then at night they'll be doing classwork. So they're actually going to get credit at the same time that they're at camp. So we're working closely with CTE, we're working closely with the high schools, and we're hiring. What's that? Power on. Is it not on? Which one was Mark using? All right, anyway. So now the public can hear me better. So anyway, the student intern thing is really kind of neat. And what I'm going to mention too on the tech side is we actually hired student interns to help us do tech repair. So in the high schools, we actually have students that are helping us do Chromebook repairs, which is unique this year. It's really kind of fun. It's been an interesting thing. We hire them in the summer before their 11th grade year, and then we train them in the summer so that they can, during their time at school, they can be repairing Chromebooks, which has actually kind of saved us in a lot of ways, and we'll continue to do that. One thing I'd really like the board's backing on. So one thing we're being pushed on is to make up for the last 2 years that we've missed camp. So now we have the 6th grade, those are 6th graders now, and those are 7th graders before. We have a few unique challenges with that. My wife, who's taught both 5th and 6th grade, will tell you there's an interesting shift that happens in kids between 5th and 6th. There's a reason all the districts do their camps at the same age, because their hormones haven't quite kicked in yet. I don't know how else to say that. There's an aspect to singing songs and doing skits and things like that when they're 6th graders are just, I'm too cool for that. It's really interesting kind of how that happens, which is why we do it 5th grade camp. But what's funny is I don't know why we call it 5th grade camp, because technically it's after their 5th grade's over, so it really should be, Jennifer's like, it should be a 6th grade camp. Anyway, technically it probably is a 6th grade camp. Exactly, and that's why I think it's termed that way. But anyway, that's why we do it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions on that, but what I'd like to do is not try and make that up. There's a lot of aspects to this that would change. It would be the facility's a challenge, water's a challenge. In fact, last year, if we had done camp last year, we wouldn't have had water. There wasn't enough water in the mountains to fill the springs enough to give us water at camp. They're actually concerned about it this year, so I'm grateful we've been having some snow coming to us lately so that we hopefully don't have that issue. But there's a lot of challenges that way, and just trying to do it for 2 more grades. What I'd like is your backing just to say we can't. As much as we'd like to, we just can't. We're not staffed to do that. Any questions with that? Can I get your support?
I saw that you were now hiring student interns, so I just told my daughter, who's in 7th grade, that she didn't get the chance to go when she was in 5th, but she'll have the chance to go as an intern in the future. Yeah, in the future. So their sophomore summers when we want to hire them at camp, because then we'll have them for at least 2 summers, and because they're technically juniors at that point. Which is why I even brought the other one up. They're juniors when they graduate to sophomore, so we can hire them that summer as interns and then bring them through the next couple of years. So that's the hope. But it's kind of cool to be able to serve our own. In the past, we just hired kids from wherever. A lot of them weren't even from Provo, But now we're able to bring students in. And it's a unique thing. We think it's really cool, and it's going to work. So that's really all I have to say about camp. Do you have any questions about that?
How is the registration going? Are you seeing a lot of people interested?
Yeah, part of the problem is we used to do first come, first serve, and so you'd have this big, huge influx of parents coming in on that Monday or on that Tuesday, registering their kids. Now that we're not doing first come, first serve, we're doing more of a lottery thing. The numbers are trickling in slowly. I still anticipate we'll be short. And if we do end up having numbers that are too low, working with Keith and the council, we're saying we may condense down to 3 weeks instead of 4. if it gets to that point. There's still a lot of fear with COVID. There's still a lot of that kind of stuff happening. And honestly, not doing it for 2 years, I think, hurts us. Because, you may have had a brother that went, and he tells his younger brother now he really wants to go. So I don't know what aspects that's going to have on camp, but my guesses will be low. But I won't be able to tell you for a few more weeks.
Chad, have you been able to assess the condition of the tents? I know they're getting older, and one day we're going to have to replace them.
Yeah, some of the tents we replaced. In fact, I'm replacing 2 this year. Like the main kitchen and dining tents are getting replaced. Costs are crazy. And we used to buy them from Army surplus, and get them for a really good deal. Where they used to cost us $1,000, they're costing us $20,000. So, yeah, it's crazy what's happening. And even the 2 tents we're buying right now that they're going to cost us $40,000 for the 2 tents. If I buy them a month from now, they're going to go up to $60,000. So I mean, the costs just keep incrementing. It's in everything, but that's what you have to do. So yeah, that's why the costs at camp keep going up. But luckily, these tents that we buy, they'll outlive me. Like the tents that we have, some of them are 30, 40 years old. So we store them in a really good, I call it a shed, but it's more like an outbuilding. It's a big building. We store them in there. They're up on pallet shelves, so they're not on the ground getting, all of that type of damage. So they'll last a really long time. But
So the parents turn in the application to the principal?
Yeah, to the school. Mm-hmm. And once they do, then the secretary of the registrar, they go into Power School and they click, yep, this kid has submitted their application. They pay their money, and then we kind of work it out from there. Traditionally, we haven't ever turned kids away when we've done 4 weeks. When it was down at 3 weeks, we turned quite a few kids away, which is why we did that whole study to see how that worked. And we moved to 4 weeks, and we've kept it full. This year is just an anomaly just because of everything that's been going on. My guess is we're going to be low and have to do that. Melanie?
I know that in our COVID safety committee meeting, we talked about what COVID would change the scope of it. What are you finding that you need to do differently due to COVID?
It's kind of hard with COVID to know what we could do up there. Now, one thing we've talked about and what we've been telling the public is we're planning on doing a test-to-play type of scenario where if you want to go to camp, you'll get tested. Now, that's what we're saying right now, but obviously the health department, that may change. We're still a few months away from that, and the health department, the committee may come back and say, we don't need to worry about that now, or yeah, we're still going to do that. It's really hard to contact trace because everybody's next to everybody all the time, all throughout the day. They're sleeping next to each other in tents. There's really not a whole lot we can do there unless we keep the numbers low on purpose and, keep the 4 weeks open and keep kids more separate. I mean, there's some options we have there, I guess. But other than that, I don't really know how we can do it. I mean, we could try and get the kids to mask. We could do things like that. So, I don't know. It's hard in an outdoor environment, obviously, to try and deal with some of these things. You can't really hike with masks on. I mean, you could, but yeah. But if I could cover the kids in some sort of cellophane bag, because man, by Thursday they're not smelling very good. If we could somehow curb that would be nice. But any other questions with camp? I'm excited to do it again. I know there's a lot of public excited that we're doing it again, so I think it's a good thing. We're ready. It's been interesting though. 2 years of a break, you forget everything. This is I think forgetting things is good in some ways because tech, we have jobs because people can't remember the tech stuff, right? And my mom had me because she forgot how horrible it was having my brother. So forgetting things, is a good thing. But man, it feels like we're starting over. Like for Sadie and I, ordering all the stuff and trying to just remember, oh yeah, we have to get the SROs lined up. Oh yeah, we got to get the health clerks and the nurses involved. Oh yeah, we got to do this. We've just felt like we started over. But luckily, we bought a lot of stuff when we were going to do camp, 2 years ago. So we had a lot of things we didn't have to purchase. But
what year did you start working at camp?
Did I start working at camp? 92 was my first.
The day is going to come where Chad doesn't want to give up his June anymore to go do that. So
yeah.
We're having conversations about how to transition this program to another individual.
Yeah.
Another sucker, I was going to say.
Well, and to some of their points, does it make sense to have the tech director running outdoor ed, Yeah. And so I think secondary ed ought to pick it up personally. Oh wait, secondary already has it. Never mind, because I'm under Todd. So technically Todd has it right now because I'm under Todd. So there you go. But yeah, I don't know. I know council's working on that, and you know, it'll be a sad day for me to hang up that hat, but that's how I met my wife. So I met her, you know, and now that part's done, so I don't need to camp anymore, you know. All right, on to my next one. I wanted to show you this graph really quick that Jacob sent to me today on Chromebook damage. You guys had asked me about Chromebook damage in the last board meeting, and I felt like my answer wasn't very good. So let me just show this to you real quick. All right, so here's our Chromebook damage. I'm going to show you the Chromebook damage here, if I can show it. I'm not sure why that's... Not sure why that's flashing out. Let's see if I can get in here. So this is a graph of our year-over-year damage to Chromebooks. You can see where the pandemic hit and how high our damage went, you know. And this year to date, we're at 1,400, so you know that number is going to creep up quite a bit higher. So that's what the damage looks like year to year. This is a graph of what's breaking. So you can see a lot of displays. They're dropping and breaking the displays. They're picking keys off of keyboards, losing their chargers, or breaking their chargers, and you can kind of see just how that goes down. This graph here shows loss and theft and how many are happening at each location, elementary, middle, and high school. That data is not really surprising. This one's interesting when you look at incidents by school. So these are repairs and damage both, and you can see where the majority of the damage is happening. It's a little scary to think in middle school it's that bad, because I mean that's only 2 grades, and you're talking about a high school of 4. So anyway, it's not quite as bad as so if you look at this and you take it and let's just look at damage. You know, the middle schools aren't as bad, you know, but still 191 times 2, that's 400 compared to 277. So obviously we have an issue in middle schools with them breaking our stuff. And you can kind of see by schools, it's hard to see this, sorry. So this is by school, so you can see like how many are happening at each school. And you come down here and you just, you can see those fun numbers. All right, now I'm not picking on schools, looking just closer at the actual data itself. So our total incidents to date are 1,423. We've had 11 lost, 55 stolen, so there's 83 that are just missing. So they're not stolen, they're not, but they're somewhere. They could be in a cupboard, they might be in a drawer, who knows. You see our October 1st count, and then you see the incidents by type at the different schools. The damage number scared me a little bit, I'll be honest. I don't know what that means, you know. I think that's a bad omen, isn't it, Todd?
We'll talk later.
Yeah. So there's a number of damage. Defect, when we say it's defect, something's broken on it, but we can't say it was caused by damage, you know. So like a hinge breaks off, but we know that those hinges are traditionally weak. So we track all this data. We track repair data to say, all right, what's breaking where? What type of Chromebooks are having more problems than others? We do a lot of work in trying to determine what's happening, what's breaking. But anyway, so you can see like our total, total FY22 incidents. You know, based on past data, we're probably going to be around 2,400 again. So it's a lot of damage happening to Chromebooks. Rebecca?
So this is all like physical to the Chromebooks, right? So what about like internal stuff? Like, I know my kids have had to go in a couple times and they're like locked out of weird stuff, or something's not processing right. What about stuff like that? Do you track that too?
About like as far as what, showing that data?
Yeah, do you track that kind of data, like just when people have to do like programming type repair?
Yeah, I mean, but we track all that in our help desk. You know, but we don't really track those type of things in this specific system. This system's our inventory system, and we track this by inventory. That way we can say who are our repeat offenders, because sometimes we have the same kid breaking the device several times, or you get like, it's really interesting. So one kid lost it, and then he lost another one, and then he broke another one. And so we track all that data in this system so we can run reports against our inventory database versus who's had it and what type of damage is happening. So this is a really neat thing. And if you look at this, and I can send this out to you if you'd like, but you go down in here to the repair data tab, And there's a section, this is all the stuff we track. If you go over further, you can see all the different damages, display cutting out, receded feet. So like this is when Chris or any of my repair people are working on this, or even the students at the high schools, they go in and put detailed data about what broke, why, that type of thing.
Chad, can you go back to the original graph which outlines the different kinds of damage? I just want to know which of those don't you repair?
Which one are we looking at?
So the next to the line graph up there.
The top bar graph.
Yep, the bar graph. There we go. Display, keyboard, etc. So which on this do you, obviously you don't repair theft, but what do you repair? What don't you repair on this?
We pretty much will repair what we can. What's interesting though is if for example we have a display that's broken and it's an older Chromebook, and we don't have the part, we're not going to spend $150 to fix a Chromebook that's only worth $50. So we have to evaluate every time there's a repair, is it worth repairing? And if we have a part, what we've been doing is cannibalizing. So we keep old broken ones. The display broke, but we have a new keyboard. We'll swap keyboards out. And so we store some of that type of equipment and then swap it out. So we're constantly trying to play this game of just replacing parts. But what's interesting is we get some parts where we don't have them. So what some companies started doing last year with all the shortages, they would buy brand new Chromebooks and cannibalize those because it was cheaper than buying the parts from parts suppliers. To just buy a display would cost you more from a parts supplier than buying an entire new Chromebook and just parting that out. So you have to, there's been some interesting things the last couple of years on repairs that's caused us some angst and some real issues, but overall it's worked really well. Chris and Jacob and their team, they've done really well in trying to keep all this up.
So when a kid breaks or has to turn it in for a repair, do you give him another one?
We swap it. We swap it with an older one until that's repaired, and then we swap it back.
Swap it back. Okay. And then I'm just curious, what's the worst damage you've seen? Like, what's the worst thing a kid's done to a Chromebook?
I know, JP, you'd probably have a better answer to me. The worst damage you've seen to a Chromebook. What has Chris said? I mean, we've had cats.
All of the above.
We have one kid that he's actually too smart. He said that he's either going to end up in jail or going to make steel gates. He just destroys it trying to hack it. So he'll take it apart, rip the face off, rip the cover off. I mean, he's just going out. We give him an old one now because we're kind of sick of
him breaking the newer ones. We've had cats get on top of him, use as a litter box. We've had all kinds of issues, and like there's horror stories about what Chris has found inside of those things. Probably one of the most common ones, the one he doesn't like, is chocolate milk. He says, when chocolate milk goes down those keyboards and it sits there long enough, you can imagine what that'd be like to open it up, you know.
But we don't ever deny it. If a kid, if a student has multiple offenses,
we keep giving them Chromebooks, but
we still do everything.
But we do get to a point where it's like, okay, we're not going to give you a new one. You're going to have an older one. Now, it's not one that can't be used or won't work. Right. It'll still function, but it's not going to be a new one.
But it'll be on its last leg.
Which is part of the reason we track this data, because we know who the repeat offenders are and what the issues have been in the past. If it's just accidental, we look at each one individually, but it's fun, and there's a lot of damage. I mean, this has really increased the repair side for me, because those guys, I had to take two of my other people that were doing other jobs and put them on repair because we had so many of them we couldn't keep up, and we have to keep them in the kids' hands. So this became a top priority thing. Just like our help desk getting hit by all the calls now, letting parents, students, and everybody else call the help desk where we didn't before. So Tech's had a fun year. One-to-one has been a really fun challenge. But the one that I have JP here for is to talk to you guys about filtering. I know we've all been getting emails. You guys have been to some of those email trains, seeing some of the filtering stuff coming out. There's a lot of misinformation, a lot of misunderstandings about what filtering is, what it really can do. One way we know, JP and I always gauge it off whether our filter is working or not with TimView, because TimView, those kids for some reason, man, they're good at this hacking thing. So when we stop them from doing it, boy, they just get all up in arms, and we're like, good, it's working. The way we know it's working lately, though, is we had one kid that actually called the filtering company, or didn't call, he sent an email to the filtering company saying, hey, I'm a teacher and I need the login for my students, emailed the company hoping to get a response with the password to bypass the filter. So we know the filter is working, you know, because there's students trying to get past it all the time. But with that, I'm going to kind of turn this over to JP and let him talk about filtering for a minute, because I think it'll be good for you to see what he does.
So did your filter catch that email? Or did the company?
No, the company emailed JP.
I get all the emails that go to the company, and so I got that, and doesn't seem.
Okay.
I think we should just look at those as celebrations that are STEM education.
Yes, it is.
There you go.
Everybody's happy, it's great.
Good point, Anne-Marie. All right, with that, JP, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can talk to them about that. Please don't hesitate to ask him whatever question you want about filtering. This has been a big deal. It's been a big deal at the state, you know, where they've tried to pass legislation to say, you know, you have to do this. But JP will talk to you about all of that, and I may chime in from time to time.
Okay, I'm JP Pontius. I work with the web filter. I've been doing it for since 2002, 2003 school year. So it's been a little while. So I'm just going to kind of give you a brief history of filtering and some other things. These are the points I want to hit on. What is a web filter? How does it work? History of a filtering in our district. Myths about web filtering. Your responsibility as a school community council, since you guys are in school community councils. Examples of what the kids are doing. 3 areas of focus that I try to focus on, and then how do we address the issues. So how a filter works, basically, just real quick, easy way to do it is the filter jumps out in front of your traffic, looks at the data and delays it, and looks at the database and says, hey, is this something that we allow or don't allow? And then it pushes out either a block page or lets you go through to the traffic. That's basically what a web filter does. It's really quick. It's supposed to be really quick. Before we had some hard times in the past with web filters, and that little transition was really slow. But the technology is really good. Another thing, SSL decryption enables the filter to see HTTPS traffic. That's all because of Edward Snowden. Ever since he came on the scene, we aren't able to see what's going on as easily, and so we do this little method to kind of put us in the middle of the traffic and see what's going on. Otherwise, it's invisible. We can't see it. And then for years, we were limited to blocking websites that were only known to the filtering database, which was really frustrating because there's a lot of websites out there, and there's no way for anybody to know all of them. But we now block unknown websites with our current filter. It's a category called non-managed URLs. We do that off campus right now, but we would like to move that to on campus. The reason it's not on campus is because it kind of frustrates the teachers, because whenever they log or get on the internet, they have a different experience than the kids do. So they are preparing the lesson plans and everything looks like it's going to work, but then the kids can't get on the website because now we're blocking all the stuff that the teachers can get to and the kids can't. So we'll be working on that in the future. Any questions about how filters work? That's kind of a basic way. Okay, history of web filtering in this school district. So this is pre-2003, 2004. Between 1991 and 2003, the world went from 1 to 41 million host names. Now, host names, that's not all the websites or web content out there. There's also IP addresses where they don't use host names. And then also the dark web, which is actually the majority of the internet that most people don't even get on. So this is just the stuff that we know of. The web filter admin plus a committee that included a board member, teachers, ESPs, parents, and the HR director. This was the committee that looked over the stuff that was going on. The main purpose seemed to be at that time to only put up images and say, yes, we need to block that. And when they were doing that, it was pretty nasty stuff. It was all the pornography sites. The superintendent and board members were constantly getting emails of images and videos.
The previous.
Yes, this is back then, before that, because the filter was not hacking it. It was like filtering with a humongous fish net that had holes about like this, and you're going for guppies. That's how it was back then. Luckily, the HR director halted committee approval of these sites, because it just seemed like it was a big old party to look at pornography. He halted that practice and he told the web filtering admin at that point, he said, look, if it's bad, just block it. You don't have to come talk to us. I know they were worried back then about censorship and over-blocking, but luckily he came in and said, let's stop doing this practice. The technology used to web filter was not keeping up with the flood of content that we had out there. Post 2003, 2004, this is whenever I got into the web filtering. The host names went from 41 million to 1.6 billion. And just to remind you that that's not counting the sites that just use IP addresses or the dark web. The committee faded away. One person was given the responsibility to block and approve websites and investigate the incidents that happened. Attempts have been made to make a committee, but that's not something anybody really wants to do. The new web filter admin realized there was something wrong with the web filter, and later I found out that our database had a limit of 75,000. So if you look at all the websites up there, and then you think of all the IP addresses as well that they might use instead of host names, yeah, we were not cutting it. Every time I'd put in a new a new URL, the first one that was put in, the oldest one, would get kicked out, and so you could get to it. So we quickly moved to as soon as we could anyways, we moved to the web filter that the state was using. And I believe at the time it was called N2H2, and they're gone now, but anyways, that was a nice move because we were actually filtering something, and I didn't feel like that it was a lost cause at that point. There were still limits, but it was a lot better. 2012 was our first crack at one-to-one devices. That's whenever iSchool came on the scene, and Dixon got all these iPads. That was a challenge in and of itself, but then all of a sudden they decided to send them home and not tell us. And so I spent the next probably 2 to 3 weeks up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to keep ahead of the kids as they were trying to hack the devices and also get to inappropriate content. We've gone through different web filter companies since 2003, and we completed our move to the 5th web filtering company in December of this year. And the reason we moved to them is because we were having problems with whenever we do online testing, we just lose the internet. And the company couldn't figure it out. We took a lot of the summer trying to figure that out. We brought in new hardware, and they just couldn't figure it out. So we decided, all right, we got to put some money towards this for next year. And so we purchased a product that there's 3 other districts in the state that are using it. It's called Content Keeper. So far, it's been good. We'll keep crossing our fingers. We haven't had a big testing window yet, so. So today there are 1.9 or 1.93 billion host names. Again, not IP addresses, and also not the dark web. One person's over the web filter and investigations. This person also has other responsibilities, as you can see. We have moved to a one-to-one device model for the entire district. Pre-2021-22 school year, all students were taking their devices home. And that was during the pandemic and everything when we sent them home. At that time, there was 24/7 access to the internet from home or wherever they were at. And so our logs just grew exponentially because when we now have a lot more traffic that we're seeing. We have since, though, thank goodness, we have set some device curfews. So if kids from the elementary and the middle schools take them home, they're shut down at certain times of the night so that they can't get to the internet. So that was big. I would love for that to happen in the high schools, but we'll see what happens. Google account monitoring of alerts is now shared responsibility with the secondary principals. That has been very helpful. It used to be just me looking at all those and then trying to figure out, okay, is this real? And then sending it on to the principals to take care of from there. Inappropriate use reporting procedure has been updated. Right now, it used to be that we'd send everything to principals. This year, we've started doing something different. Anything that's off campus, we send that directly to the parents with a copy to the principal so that the parents can take care of that with some support of the principals if they need. So that's helped out the principals, I know. There's still expectation by some that the district is keeping their kids safe and they don't need to do anything about it. So they have this false sense of security that, hey, I can just give this device to my kid, he can have it all night long, and I don't need to monitor it. So that becomes a challenge. Just some myths about filtering. There's a lot of myths out there, but this is just kind of the stuff that I hear about. An internet filter will keep all inappropriate, harmful content out of the reach of my staff and students. If the web filter isn't doing its job, just add another web filter. That's actually something that came from one of the legislature. They thought that we could just keep adding filters, but that doesn't work. Because we have a web filter, there's no need to monitor student internet usage. The technology department determines what content should be blocked. We do classify some things to be blocked, but that's whenever it's inappropriate. Some people think that we just willy-nilly just try to make their day horrible and block the stuff that they need to get to for education, but this database comes from, it's shared throughout the whole world, and so there's a lot of people putting stuff in. There might be some false positives, somebody puts in some wrong information, or that account or that website might have gotten hacked at one time, and then nobody chose to update that, hey, it's better now. Technology department is aware of everything that happens online. We don't have time to sit there and watch every line of traffic to see what's going on. And it's pretty monotonous now. It used to be a little easier because you could actually, you go to a website and it would just have one URL. But now you go to one website and they share their content, or their content shared from all over the place. And so it's just got feelers out there, and then all the advertisements and everything like that. So looking through the logs is a lot more monotonous than it used to be. A web filter is the only tool needed to keep users safe on task. We need a lot of different tools. We started using Bark to monitor the students' accounts, and that's helped out a lot as well, because we can't see a lot of stuff that happens inside their accounts because that's encrypted. But now with this system, we can actually do that. If I don't want to go through this, if you guys have already gone through your responsibilities in your community councils, this is just kind of the 3 things that you need to know and that your community council needs to be aware of. What filters are being used in the district, what resources are used at your school to teach digital citizenship, and then what protocols the district uses when something happens, when a kid gets to something inappropriate. Would you like me to go over that, or do you guys remember going through this in community councils?
Yeah, there's a shift in the legislature to push that responsibility to community councils. So it's actually not even our responsibility to make sure that the parents are instructed and taught how this all really functions.
But our community councils rely on us to help us teach them to move forward. So while you don't call for technology, part of our stewardship and
right.
With you to continue.
And JP does send the information out to all the principals in the community here, saying, hey, here's some resources here. This is a community council responsibility to make sure this gets done.
And we appreciate that. That's what, and we recognize and appreciate that.
Yeah, so and I make myself available to those principals that would like me to come, but I have a slideshow that I just share out with them. So I guess the main things I always want to touch on here is that parent education is key in this, to help them realize that they can't just give the device to their kid and just walk away. It seems to be a surprise whenever we get a parent that reports a problem and they say, I had no idea that they could, if I leave them with it for 24 hours a day, that they're going to get to something. So we really just need to point on that, as well as helping the kids in the digital citizenship, because, they're going to come across it. You don't have to be looking for it to get to it sometimes. I'll just kind of skim through this unless you'd like to stop. I wanted to point out just the difference that I think I already talked about this though, the difference in the way that we report this. We go to the parents if it's an off-campus incident instead of going directly to the principal. And that's basically the difference that we, in our protocol. Yep.
So, sorry, do you want to go first, Derek?
No, you go.
Okay. Since we've gone to a one-to-one and kids are taking it home more often, are we seeing an increase of inappropriate content being accessed?
We definitely did during the online era. It was pretty crazy. We had, and this is just the incidents that we caught, 285 elementary incidents and I think 275 secondary incidents during that year. So last school year.
And so did they?
And before that, it was like under 100 for each of those groups.
And is it like a zero tolerance so that they don't get their Chromebook back after that, or?
It depends on the severity, because this goes in, parents love to hear if their kids are doing something, no matter the severity, just so they can fix the problem before it gets really bad. If it's really bad and it's a repeat offense, yes, they limit their access to the device. We have some parents, whenever this happens, they ask us to do a whitelist only experience for the child, so we can put them in a different category so that they only get to the websites that they need for school. That's still limited because they can't really go out and explore and do research other ways that most of the other kids do, but they need help, and that's what we provide to the parents. We also do some where some parents just want YouTube completely blocked, and so we do that as well. So it's just kind of a case by case.
Derek, did you have a question?
Yeah, in Google, there's like, as you start typing, it will automatically start filling stuff out. How is that algorithm, is that based off of just prior history of searches? Is it? It
has, and it used to be really bad because, there was, but I don't remember when this changed, but it's probably whenever, because teachers and educators just kept saying, hey, would you quit having this happen, because you start typing something, and if it was inappropriate was the number one thing, inappropriate word was the number one thing, it would just auto-populate. And so we have safe search, and so that eliminates that issue, or it's supposed to. You can't get rid of everything, but.
My kid actually just yesterday was saying, hey, I have been searching, and as I start typing something, it's filling in with swear words and populating things there, and I just was like.
Yeah, it shouldn't do that on our thing, but if we hear about it, we contact Google and say, hey, this is what's happening again. We need to get this resolved. So yeah. Any other questions there? So this is just some examples of what the kids are doing. So they do, a lot of it's done through Google and YouTube searches. They look for emulators and proxies. These are ways to basically give them access to a website. The emulators they run like full Linux machine or a Windows machine, and then they can get on the browser or whatever they want from that area, and the proxies as well. But basically, when you go to those sites, the traffic is going from those sites, not from our device, and so we can't block that. That's always been a problem. Those pop up all the time, and we try to keep in front of them. The filtering companies try to as well, but you give a kid enough time to keep on searching, and they're going to find it. we block those keywords, but there's only so many ways we can predict how they're going to misspell or try to get around that. They'll put spaces in it, they'll misspell emulators or proxies or whatever, and the people out there, they're trying to get more traffic there, so they figure out ways to direct them to that. Searches for body parts and other adult content. Like I said, they'll look at different languages, misspell the words to get around it. The biggest thing that the kids out there are looking for, though, just to reassure you, they're not looking for all this stuff. They're looking for unblocked games. That's what they want to do. So that should make you feel a little better. Doesn't help out the teachers, though, whenever they find a unblocked game and they look around the room and their kids are just down into it, not focusing on what she's saying, and they're playing an unblocked game. But we try to keep ahead of that. We made some progress this year with the new web filter. Had a weekend where a few kids were just letting the expletives fly on their Google search so that I could see it, that they were ticked off, that they couldn't get to their game, and that was their only out, and I'm ruining their life. So they let me know quite a bit whenever. So that's another way we know that we're doing a good job. Manga and anime, that's another big one. They love their anime stuff, and that's a frustration for them because we block that. But that's a pretty big distraction, and there's a lot of adult content on there that is kind of masked as just a kid's anime. If the search terms used return content that is miscategorized, or a website has changed hands or has been compromised, the student is able to get to that content. Or someone shows them a method that they are using to get around the filter. That happens quite a bit. They love to share that information. And then, like Chad said, contacting Content Keeper directly and posing as a teacher to get a password to get around the filter. So that one just happened this week, actually. So that was a first. So this is kind of how I try to do things, since I'm the kind of the only person doing this, so I can prioritize and try to get the most important things, or I guess the things that'll cause more harm to kids. The first focus is keep them safe from themselves and others. And then the second one is to keep kids safe from harmful content, and then to keep kids on task. That's probably the biggest problem we have, but we don't have a whole lot of time to take care of that, because we're taking care of the other things up above there that we feel are more important, and I have another job or 10. So that's what we try to do. So when the pandemic hit, the one-to-one computer model hit almost overnight. I mean, we had to roll out these devices really quick. And kids suddenly had this big old world that they didn't have access to before. And parents were at a loss on how to control this. I was forced to drop everything else and focus on reacting to the incident reports and alerts. And basically that's what I did last year. I haven't been fishing for like 2 years because I've been doing this stuff. So I plan on doing it this year, though. Let's see if there's anything else I want to point out on there. So thankfully things have slowed down a little bit, mainly because we've not allowed the elementary kids to take their devices home as much. Whenever we did over that I think it was Christmas break, luckily we were able to put a curfew in place during that time. Before that, some of them took some home and they were just going crazy. Not that there's a lot of kids doing it, it's just there's more kids in elementary, so it's going to look like there's more going on. So I'm pretty much just in a reaction mode most of the time, and then I just try to focus on the top priorities. Focus 2 is next and usually takes most of my time. And so, like I said before, there's not a whole lot of time for the third focus. Whenever I do get an incident, I have to stop what I'm doing and I have to really delve into the logs and see what's going on. at that time, sometimes I'm not able to look at the reports for that day. And so there's things that just get missed. I do still search for things like the kids that's looking for how to kill myself and things like that, because those things need to get taken care of. But a lot of the other stuff, focus 2 and 3 just don't get taken care of.
Well, the one thing too, JP, that he has to do, if somebody's searching appropriate content, sometimes it's not even intentional. You know, when you go to a website and there's thumbnails down the side, it may be down 30, 40 pages, and the student doesn't even know that their website hit an inappropriate site. So what JP has to do is go look at the website and say, all right, what did they do? How long did they spend on this website? Did they click on one of those links? So he has to do a lot of investigation beyond just, here's something that popped up. What did they do? What was their intent? And that's what JP has to figure out. So it's very time consuming.
And a lot of times the only way to see that, to see what the traffic actually looks like and what they're doing, is for me to go through and do that myself, so I can see, okay, that's what happened, or okay, that was an accident. They weren't really looking for that. A lot of times some of these words that we block are parts of other words, and so I have to go through that route instead of just sending it to the principal or the parent and say, hey, look what your kid's doing, because I mean, if they're not really doing it, there's no reason to send it out to them. It causes all sorts of problems. So my philosophy, and this was my philosophy before, my philosophy always was to protect the innocent. Because if somebody wants to get to something, you can get to it. It's easy. Misspelling things, different things like that, you're going to get around the filter and get to what you want, especially if you have enough time. But I found that there's a flaw in that philosophy, basically because kids who find out ways around the filter don't keep it to themselves. They love to share with other people. And so whenever they do that, then we have a problem. There's even a lot of times what they'll do too is when they go home, they'll use their personal device, which we don't have any control over, and so they'll figure out how to get to a website or do certain things, and then they'll share it with themselves or other people over social media or whatever. And some kids even pay for that information. So how do we address these things? I talked to some of the other school districts to see what they're doing. The ones I talked to don't just have one person doing the filtering. So hiring another person that just does filtering, block non-managed URLs, that's what we want to do on campus going forward at some point. Enable device curfews. We want to do that at secondary or the high schools. Provide a solution for parents so they can control devices when off campus. I know Alpine has a product that they're paying for, and we're going to look into that a little more, where parents can go in and set a curfew, and then also they can kind of set up places that the kids can't go to. So we're going to look at that. Assign one person over the hardware and configuration of the filter. So this would be somebody that just takes care of the configuration and setup of that filter and the maintenance. And then also a person, and this person also acts as like a backup whenever we need to do investigations or whatever. Assign additional person to view and forward the reports and alerts to principals and admins, and a committee of 3 or 4 employees to approve requests to unblock content and websites. And this can just be done by just a simple email group that these people are part of. So those are my suggestions, and this is just from that I hope that we can do in the future so that we can focus on some of these other areas of focus, because we are missing a lot of stuff. We're getting just the surface. So any questions? Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Can you get that forwarded to Bonnie so that we can have
Yeah.
a copy of that?
You bet.
That'd be great.
So I don't know if you need some sort of a plot or something. What JP's had to look at over the course of the last, how many years is that now? 20? Probably 20. And 20 years, some of the things he's had to experience and view, or, I feel bad for him. The other thing, too, is Jason always attacks him, too. If there's some sort of an employee investigation, JP gets drug into those as well,
90% of the time, JP's giving me a call.
We got a problem. But anyway, I just want to thank JP personally for what he does, and hopefully, you know, he, like Judy Rose, for example, I can't remember what Judy used to say, but she used to talk about this JP, you know, that, hey, JP's watching, JP's the one that's going to get you. And I guess JP walked in one time. She was like, JP's here. All the kids were like, oh, you know. Anyway, JP's made a name for himself out there.
Yes, we're throwing love for JP. He also is singularly responsible for making sure all the hot spots that we give out to all the families are hooked up and ready to go.
Yep. JP wears many hats.
He does the online grammar request investigations too.
He does that.
So he does a lot. So like filtering is a portion of his job, but he doesn't, that's not what he does all the time. But I think we do a phenomenal job with the resources and what we do have. Obviously, we're always trying to find ways to make things better, but I just wanted JP to talk to you about that so you understood a little bit more about how this works. It's not a perfect science. It never will be. If you want to protect students 100%, unplug the internet. That's really about the only way you can do it. We have one person out there trying to fix it, you have 10 others trying to break it. You know, so there's a huge portion of people out there trying to break filtering so the students can get by it. Anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. Tell everybody thank you down at the Technology Center. All right, next we're going to talk about the DEI statement with Doug Finch, the Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate the stamina you're showing today. I mean, how's your retreat going? I mean, should we let the public know how much fun you're having today? Wow. You guys are earning, I guess I'll just say benefits in the life after something, because you are working super hard, and I'm hoping that the little bit of time I spend with you it can be a little change of pace, because I do want to do a little bit of a participatory activity with you in a follow-up discussion with you, right? From one we've had previously about where we stand as far as our direction and vision and priorities relates to this important initiative to make sure everyone feels included in our efforts so that we provide educational and supportive services to our whole community. So you received something in the board docs that hopefully the first page of that is just an outline of some general initiative steps that we see ourselves taking, not all in one day or even 1 month or even 1 year, but that's a direction as we have done some strategic planning as a council with the superintendent. We've reached out to some other school districts to learn with what their efforts have been. We've talked with individuals in the Granite School District. In fact, we've been able to secure and retain a consultant who's worked in this area before for a great deal of her career. Charlene Louis is her name, from the Granite School District. And then we've also have great connections with the work and the things they're learning in the Davis School District, as Dr. Jackie Thompson is someone that works really closely with our diversity and equity coordinator as well. So we're trying to be thoughtful, and we're also trying to be strategic, and we're also trying to make sure that we're working at the pace and the level that our board and our neighborhood would like us to work on this. So as you see that first page, then, if you'll just glance at it with me, you can see that there's 3 or 4 key steps that we see. Now, this is not everything that we know that we need to do, but you can see here at the top of the list is to establish that vision and priorities, right? And that is the work I want to spend a few minutes, if we can, as much as you're willing to look at a much revised, concise mission belief statement of sorts that we really want the Board of Education to really own, right? We wanted to make sure that it says the things that you feel really represent your vision, your beliefs, as well as your constituents.
Doug, if I may.
Go ahead.
The purpose of this today is to put your eyes on this latest version of it, hear any suggested edits you may have, and then we're going to want to bring this back and have the board formally approve it at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah,
We've had a lot of time that's passed. I know we've given a lot of thought to this on our own and in other discussions, so that's our objective today.
Thank you, Keith. At the same time, we also want to see that this is not necessarily the end either. It's a very nice place to start this discussion because it should guide future actions, right? So you'll see on that first page of the board doc, it also talks about our need to engage in dialogue and professional growth together. So if you'll, again, I didn't put this on that board doc, but if you'll earmark and save the date for 2 days, and one of the 2 that we'd love to have you as board members all participate in, June 8th or June 21st. We recently, in council, we kind of looked at everyone's calendars together and identified those 2 days as being time when we can spend in working together on some discussion, dialogue, some training around June 8th and June 21st. One is a Wednesday, June 8th is a Wednesday, June 21st is a Tuesday. And it's one or the other. We would like all of our administrators and our board and key leaders to participate in a leadership training, right? And a little bit of what would be part of that content is there on that board doc that talks about professional development and dialogue around the principles, which are called REACH training. But also we'd like to give some time to reflect and apply what's learned, begin to have particularly our building level principles, and departments begin to think about how they can set goals for their next steps of implementing those principles in their work, right? So June 8th or June 21st, would love, again, for everyone that's in a leadership role, we're going to design this training specifically with leadership in mind.
Do you happen to have a time?
Likely it's going to be like an 8 to 3 kind of a day. We'll probably spend the morning mostly getting a guided training with vocabulary, principles of what those things you see, the 5 bulleted items there, that's kind of the content, the scope and sequence a little bit of the REACH training. And then we'll do a lunch with the idea of then having groups in the afternoon reflect and apply and maybe look at some of the data. We'll work to provide some data for schools that they can be reflective, as you'll see later in this priority list here, of starting to say, what's our next step for my school? What's the next step for my department? What's our next step as a district in developing our capacity and our implementation of these priorities, right? Then below that, you'll see that some things I've already alluded to, a needs assessment, right? It needs to be ongoing, but definitely we could formalize that work around 3 different areas. Qualitative data, meaning the opinions, the needs, the priorities of our community, which would be students, teachers, parents. Also a quantitative look at our data. This would be everything from school performance data to also discipline data, to attendance data, to who is and is not, being well served at school. And then finally, a review of our existing practices, policies, personnel that also impact our vision for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then finally, this is just an example, the last bullet here, and I know Anne-Marie's really aware of this. There's an aspect of this that's just going to be an ongoing expectation on the teaching and learning side of things, that there's going to be these professional expectations of what teachers should be doing. This is a recent guideline that came out of Code of R277328 that just talked about these professional expectations for educational equity. And you can see some of those bullets of things that are essentially being put our direction by our Board of Education at the state level, right? To say, here's best practice as it relates to equitable instruction in classrooms. And we expect more to be coming. I mean, we'll see what even comes out of this next legislative session that continues to guide and direct some of these conversations, because this is, again, a very volatile, hot topic right now. Any questions about that kind of scope of some initial things? It's not everything. I'll give some credit to our supervisors who work with building level leadership. They're engaging in these dialogues and conversations with their principals. Some are considering looking at articles and books together to try and have some really guided, thoughtful discussions about what this looks like in each of our buildings, right? But this is kind of at that district level we wanted you to see. This is the direction we feel like we can create greater shared understanding, name our vision and priorities, and begin to move forward in a multi-year process, right? And do it in a thoughtful, reflective way. Any feedback on that? Welcome, McKay. We'll transition then to, if as much time, Melanie, as you want to give this activity, you'll see that the document I've handed out to you, which is page 2 of the board docs, is our latest 2.0, 3.0, whatever you want to call it, version of some language that our diversity, equity, as well as our student and family support team has also given input, which is multi-departmental representation, has gone in and taken some ideas and concepts we felt are important for how we move forward with this, and have narrowed it down to what we think are some really concise and compelling thoughts. You'll notice, just in summary, the first bullet talks about we believe all students are capable of learning. And notice the word all is a a word that, in terms of that parallel construction, comes out in each of these bulleted points. We want to collectively share that responsibility that all students be successful is bullet number one. Number two, we believe that there needs to be an environment that's created, right? We have a way to dictate what the climate and culture, the environment, the layout of what our schools and our activities look like that can be very inclusionary of everybody. Bullet number three, we want all of the community to engage with us. And then bullet four talks about us making sure that all of our resources are equitably made available in such a way that gives people opportunity, no matter where they're coming from. This could be, again, disability. This could be socioeconomics. This could be health. This could also be, again, a lot of the other protected areas, such as country of origin or language development or race. All those sorts of things are all included when we talk about equitable opportunities for people. So, Melanie, I'll turn the time to you as if you want to say, let people mark it up on their own. If you want to have one copy, as Keith mentioned, that you wrestle with some of this language. If there's anything in here that you feel like is not really well represented, that's palatable to the people, your constituents, or to the board members that represents your thoughts, or if you even want to take something a slightly different direction, as much time as you want to spend on this, our goal as a district office is to make sure that this is your vision, and then we'll respond to it with our future actions.
All right. I guess if there's anything, if you want to look over this, and then we can have, Keith, do you want to take notes, or do you want me to?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I have a question about the last paragraph. So it says that we strive to have our buildings serve as a place of refuge where students can separate themselves from the chaos of the world. So I found that particular sentence super interesting. And I hope nobody's offended at this, but it almost sounded religious in content. And I am religious, so that didn't bother me, and I don't know that it will bother people, but I'm curious, like, kind of more like the history behind where that sentence came from and the thought behind it, because I don't feel like I remember anything like that in our first draft. And I don't know, I don't mind it. I love that idea of our schools being a place like that for kids. And I've had one of my principals tell me that exact thing when it came to Christmas break this particular school year. There were kids who were not excited for Christmas break because they didn't want to have to go home and spend all the time at home. So, like, I understand where that's coming from, and I love that idea. I just am curious kind of about the history. Where did that come from? What was the idea behind including that?
I've got Brian, who's been really hands-on with this, that maybe he can speak to a couple of those things. Like I said, the intent is right. We want to get the language so that it resonates appropriately, right, and doesn't turn people off to the idea. I hear you.
Yeah, I guess I was a little nervous about that too, but I like the idea, so.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, I'm Brian Yazzie, Diversity and Equity Coordinator. So the language that you saw, we went and got input from our advisory committees. We have 6 multicultural advisory committees. And so as we looked at what is their vision, you know, what could we do to condense the original version that we had? And so as I looked at suggestions, and the word refuge kind of stuck out several times. And so I myself as a religious person too, you know, trying to find the appropriate word was also something that was kind of what would be a good fit. And then of course I've had other people review it. And it just kind of seemed it flowed, and it respected other people's feedback that we've received. And so that's, I think, a big part of why that was included, and just a lot of the feedback that we had from folks that reviewed it.
And how about the whole idea behind the whole concept of the schools being a refuge? Was that in our first draft? I don't remember it in the first draft. Did someone in particular have that kind of vision?
A lot of it is a safe place.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to create in our schools, is a safe place that you come in the doors, that you know you're going to be safe, that you know that, you know, whatever problem you may have at home, that you can come and feel safe, that you'll have a caring adult there waiting for you.
Okay.
And that might have been more a part of the original wording, because I remember that's resonating with me. We talked about safety, that kids felt safe at school. So it was probably as that consolidation happened and took multiple sentences that were trying to speak towards safety and tried to create that. And as he mentioned, it resonated with the people who were wordsmithing this. Please feel like none of this language, and I know I've already said this, but we want you to own it, to change it, to mold it to what you feel like is really representative of what you'd like to say. Because this is not the district offices or the student services statement. We want to give you stock language that you can make your statement that you feel comfortable with.
So maybe if we add the word safe in front of place. So we strive to have our buildings serve as a safe place of refuge. That just sounds better to me.
Sounds just a little more neutral, secular, yeah.
That's it.
Reference to me, sorry, but anyway, like, there are a lot of transparency bills, and they, frankly, so this was this last week I asked for specifics on what people was worried about, and they brought me sentences like this. They said, why do you think that students need protection from their home? And when I go, sometimes they do, they're like, that's not acceptable.
Why do people think that's not acceptable?
That we set ourselves apart from people's homes, and we go, your home is not correct, we are.
Okay.
And they don't like that.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
And so I like the idea of a safe place of refuge, a safe place of refuge and support, encouragement, and all those other things that we, not just, it's not always that we're trying to do refuge for every circumstance. If we could just, and I think that would be helpful in how some things are being read all the time at the moment.
Appreciate that perspective, McKay. You're right, and so there can be some wordsmithing that makes that feel less an unintended consequence that someone feels, attacked by that phrasing, right? Yeah. So, and yet we also know there's some homes that need some help and support, but we shouldn't say that in a way that puts someone on the defense, right?
Somebody's going to feel like we're substituting ourselves for home.
Yeah, continue to again work that out, or just say that's a sentence that you want to have somebody work on and get back to the group as to how they want to work that section. That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I've
Jennifer.
been thinking that second half, separating themselves from the chaos of the world. Maybe we say something instead, like where they feel welcome and a sense of belonging.
Separate maybe is a word to try and avoid.
Because I feel like some of it.
This is supposed to be inclusion.
Yeah, part of the efforts of diversity and inclusion that I don't know is necessarily put in the statement yet is that because we want everyone to feel welcome no matter their background, and we want to encourage everyone who is part of our school communities to do that with each other. It's not just on the staff, those running the school. It's on everyone in that school that we all should value one another no matter our backgrounds. So if we can find a way to...
Would that be, Jennifer?
Do we want to put that?
Yeah, are you suggesting that's maybe another thing to add into that concluding paragraph, that concept of all stakeholders, all community members work together in a spirit of unity and shared purpose, or something along that line?
And just kind of going back to the word separate themselves from the chaos of the world, we're trying to prepare them for the world.
Yeah.
Right? So
like get rid of that section.
So that's kind of...
I would agree if we can take away that separate and do more of the welcome.
Get this in your notes. Perfect. That's wonderful feedback. I can see that perspective very clearly. Thanks. This is great.
I do want to say I love the condensed version and the bullet points. It's so much easier to read and to grasp the whole idea of it in way less time and way less sentences. It's better, for sure. I love that.
Yeah, we benefited from some people in Anne Marie's department who've got some really strong wordsmithing, language art skills who helped that be a little easier on the eye that way, right? It's much more accessible, I think, for folks to read and catch the point, right? Thank you.
I do really love the sentence in the first paragraph about the uniquely diverse population in Provo School District is a strength. I think that's great. I do feel like the very last sentence, it's a great sentence on its own. It feels a little disjointed from, we endeavor to collectively prepare students to be leaders in our community. I'd like to know better how we can make that fit, or do we need to fit that in there with what we're talking about?
Well, that was kind of what Rebecca was talking about, like saying, you know, we're trying to prepare them for the
If we were to
chaos.
put
Right.
diverse community, it ties back to the first paragraph.
Diverse community, right. So I agree with this. It's just got to tie in better.
And whether it's leaders or contributors, like you said, that I when I read it at the same time, I had that same reaction. I thought the word leaders like kind of struck out there as like well, that's kind of an interesting word that hadn't really had seen, you know, kind of flow to that point. I like the idea that we're developing leaders, but not everyone can lead. This really a very commendable thing to be a great follower sometimes too, right? And a contributor to a team. Not everyone has to be the chief or the person in charge, right?
So my question with that same sentence too is, though, what does it have to do with DEI? Because we want to prepare kids to be good leaders in our community. That almost feels more academic. But is it because we follow this, we're preparing kids to be better learners in our community, or leaders? Like, does that make, so maybe we just need to relate it back?
Because they value the
Because
diversity
they value
within the
and they know how to.
community.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll see the community as their whole community and know how to engage everybody and create everyone to be civically engaged. I mean, just like I say, maybe a little bit more than just the term leader and putting in the context to the rest of the statement, right?
Other ideas, anything else?
Terry, I saw you making a couple notes. Did you have a thought or two?
I was just writing down what everybody was saying.
Thank you.
Okay, did you have any other suggestions?
No, I like the bullet points. I think, as a sum, I think that if we strive to have our building serve as a safe place of refuge, and a couple other things rather than the why that is, and I think it's a stronger statement if it ends in that idea in a place, because what this has to do more than anything else, all of our academics want. We want leaders. We want people prepared for the future. This, people have to feel safe first and foremost. All students get to feel safe and welcome
and valued.
And I think it needs to end with that idea.
Yeah. Great feedback. Yeah, like you say, there's lots of statements we can make. We really want to put this stake in the ground that will drive work, like we just mentioned before, that keeps coming back and anchoring into the main thing that we think is our priority. And a lot of that is, I think you've discussed, about inclusiveness, welcomeness, safety, value, contribution, being civic-minded, et cetera, right? Whatever it is, those sorts of things. So this is excellent feedback. Again, just want to be sensitive to your time. You guys have worked so hard today. If you want to continue to take a couple more pieces of feedback, Melanie, or if you want to say there's an assignment you'd make at this point, that this next version, as Keith mentioned, is one that we're not asking for a vote or anything today. This was a little working session with the idea of, in a future upcoming meeting when you're ready, that we would say this is the time to adopt a statement.
And I'll reach out to the other board members and make sure that if they have any feedback or to have
for
it
sure.
fit, so.
And especially the ones who aren't here are pretty passionate about this stuff too. Thank you for wanting to be inclusive of them.
I don't have anything else to discuss about this, so we'll just get any more input to you.
Okay. And thank you again for your support. Just again, note those dates and just note that the intention is for us to have a great day discussing this in depth and begin to create some anchoring language and experiences together. There's nothing more important than taking this journey of what your thoughts are and about who you serve and who your community is and how you include them all is a personal journey, but it's a collective journey we'll take as a school district. And so thanks for your willingness as board to take the lead, to not only make a statement, but also to participate with us, shoulder to shoulder with the key leaders, right down to the building leaders who get the water at the end of the row on this stuff. And those dates, if you can plan to attend one of the two, that'd be fantastic. We're putting a little committee together that's involving our team in student services. We're going to reach out to teaching and learning. We'll reach out to the supervisors to get some building level administration. If there's a board member that would like to participate in our design of those days for June, we'd be open to having someone at that level participate as well. But we met yesterday for an hour or two, kind of got a few things fleshed out, but we're ready to start putting some details and some input together, so having some of our intended audience giving us feedback would be very helpful too. So thanks so much. Appreciate your help.
I just have one thing for whoever's taking notes. The last sentence of that first paragraph, the intentional creation of a supportive educational and social experiences, I think if we just take out the word
Take out the A?
Yep. The intentional creation of supportive educational and social experiences.
Okay. The next one is, we're talking about calendaring items. So we reached out to the city council, Provo City Council, and to see if we could move it from Zoom to a in-person meeting, and we found out that they actually cannot meet on, what was the original date, Bonnie? Was it March 24th?
Yes.
So, yeah,
Yes,
so
March
they
24th.
can't meet on March 24th. And part of the reason why they wanted to meet on Zoom was they don't have a space available big enough to feel like we can social distance. So anyway, we put it out there that we will host it. And so I have 3 dates for you to look at and tell me which one would be the best for you here. So we're looking at April 12th, April 26th, and April 28th at noon. And we'd hold it at the PDC.
I would prefer the 26th or the 28th.
I happen to know I'm not available on the 28th. But if everybody else likes that, y'all can do it
So
with me.
what about the 26th? Is that open for everybody?
I'm free. We have a morning study session, but.
No, we
Well,
don't.
Do we not?
No.
Oh, that's just on my automatic calendar. then.
No, so we
Okay.
only have April 19th.
That's right. Okay.
Board meeting that month. So we could do that. So should we just put that on the calendar for April 26th then?
That, as long as they're not meeting that week.
Those dates were given to us by them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these were the dates that they said they would have available.
Yeah, it's the last week of the month, so I don't think there's any.
Okay, let's plan on the 26th, and Bonnie, you'll reach out to them. Thank you very much.
That'll likely be a noon meeting, probably noon,
Yes.
Yeah.
and we'll host that. We made it.
And it's only 3:15.
We still have a little bit more to do. Not much.
Do we have to actually start at 3:30 though?
I don't
Yes,
know.
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so is there a motion to close the study session?
So moved.
All right. We will meet back here at 3:30.
And Caleb is